Good morning, how are you? Okay, this is not a full episode, but this is a correction on the last video that we did that I think has got to be said. I was going to make a full video today, but I was up coughing all night and my voice is still totally wrecked. So hopefully by tomorrow I can have a full episode out for you. But I didn't want to go one more day without putting out a correction on the last episode. It's this episode. Also, if you watch this clip, you can also see what I'm talking about there. We're going to go over it here. In the last episode, Lady C was making the point that Diana consistently tried to upstage Charles in every way possible, and that she had always done this. And one of the examples she gave was the time when they were in Australia. She said Charles had been invited to play the cello, and that as he was trying to tune up, Diana, with all her sly ways, snuck up behind him, completely uninvited, sat down at the piano, played something beautiful, some piece by Rachmaninoff. And then, she was just so proud of herself, smiling, and his face was a study in indignation and all of this. The passage that Lady C wrote went like this. On one infamous occasion, when they were sharing an official engagement, Charles sat down to play the cello. While he was tuning up, Diana crept up behind him, sat down at the piano, and played the opening bars of Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 3. As all the cameras swung from him to her, her expression was wreathed in satisfaction, while his was a study in humiliation and suppressed anger. Okay, so when I went to go edit last video, I was like, I need to find that footage. That sounds juicy. And then I found the footage. And it isn't at all what Lady C is describing. Not even a little bit. And this is my concern. What else has been presented to us in this book as fact when had we a video to see what had actually transpired, we would find that Lady C had dramatized it to such an extent that it doesn't even reflect the events. Okay, I'm going to play the footage that I found for you, and then we'll talk about it.
Henri Touzeau, professor of cello, remembered the prince had once played the instrument, but he graciously agreed to blow a couple of notes, sufficiently in tune to avoid being called a whining pom. It was the princess's turn, except perhaps the princess. She shifted about, looking rather reluctant, before the persuasive professor led her off to the piano, apparently her forte. Without further fuss, she dropped her bag on the floor and plunged into Rachmaninoff's complicated Concerto No. 2. Fingers finally failed her, the princess looked for an escape, but Henri the maestro felt her congratulatory kiss was in order. Now it wasn't only the southern sun that reddened her cheeks as the blushing princess almost ran for cover, clearly embarrassed at her musical debut.
Okay, now granted, the person narrating that footage also was giving you his own version of events, right? He's telling you a story while the footage plays. And yet, I tend to believe what the narrator of this video said, right? This newscaster who'd been given a piece of film to discuss seems to have a greater version of the truth than Lady C. What footage was she watching where we even see Charles' expression when Diana goes to sit down and play the piano? And very clearly, she's being invited to play the piano. They invited Charles, you used to play the cello. And then he sits down, and I don't even know if he's tuning up to play something or if he was just sort of acquiescing to the demand that he sit down and you used to play, and so he's like, I don't know. Maybe he was tuning up. But it seems like they are then inviting Diana, okay, you also play an instrument. Here's a piano. And it's clear she's happy to be asked, she's not like, oh, I couldn't possibly, oh, please don't ask me. Oh, please don't ask me. She goes over, plumps down, she's ready to go. And she plays a few bars, and then she rushes out of the room. But I don't think it's because she's like, oh, I humiliated my husband or anything. I think feels a little self-conscious that this old man just gave her a kiss when she was not expecting that. Like, I think her reaction in that moment after she gets done playing is one of embarrassment. I'm just trying to figure out what in the world she was talking about from the scene. At which point does Diana uninvited creep up behind Charles and play the piano? I didn't see that in this video. At which point is Charles sitting there with suppressed rage on his face? Again, I didn't see that. I saw somebody get super close to Charles' face and be like, play the cello. So he acquiesces to the demand. Then I see somebody invite Diana, play something at the piano. She also says, okay. Then she gets up and is kissed by this old man who seems to really like to be really close to people's faces. And then she rushes out embarrassed. So this is my issue, you guys. What does this then say about what we've heard from Lady C thus far? Because this is a gross exaggeration to pad this whole place in the book about here's an example, and here's an example, and here's an example of all the times when she was trying to demean Charles. But this is not a good description of that. I'm not saying there wasn't times when she tried to demean him. We have people's eyewitness accounts, people who are close to them, royal cousins, saying she always was trying to take a swipe at him. She was always trying to put him down. She didn't just do that privately. She also did it publicly, And I think that there's enough facts to support the fact that, she wouldn't have minded making Charles feel bad. But this was not one of those incidents. So now we've got this question hanging in the air now over this whole book. How many things has she exaggerated that there's video evidence that this was an exaggeration on her part? What has she told us that we have no evidence to support that has been exaggerated? Is anybody else concerned about this? Because this is just such a vast retelling of the narrative. Does she do this all the time? Is this... everyone's like, oh, she's the most reliable person. She's the most reliable narrator. Everybody talks to Lady C because she's discreet and she only tells you things when she knows she can. And she is, she may be a little bit caustic in her videos, but that lady knows the truth. And as we've read this book, I'm like, wow, she's got a lot of sources. There's lots of quotes in this book, a lot of things to back up. But then we come to this and I'm not persuaded at all that Diana was trying to upstage Charles and that Charles was angry about it. What does this mean? Is anybody else concerned about this? And have any of you guys ever seen, have you ever noticed a consistency with, like, she'll say one thing and then you go and like look up maybe some footage, some film, and they don't line up. This is the first time in the book when she's mentioned something and then there was footage that I could go and watch. So maybe this is just a one-off, But it's like, when you read, say like you read a publication and you don't know if it's lies or truth, I'm sitting down reading the New York Times. Okay. Then you get to a story in the newspaper and it happens to be about a topic you know something about. And you start picking out all the errors. Well, that's not really true. That's not true. And then it makes you go, wait a second, what about all these other stories I've been reading? And I didn't know enough to know whether that was true or not. That's how I feel right now. I don't know enough to know if the rest of this book is true or not. But this is such a glaring lie that it does demand that I question much of the rest of the things that I've read. Now, obviously, we're going to finish this book. And I do believe most of it is true. But now I'm realizing that Lady C is not above some major exaggeration. Tell me what you think. Does this bother any of y'all? And am I overreacting to the different narratives? Or do you see what Lady C described? In that bit of footage, do you see the picture she painted? Am I the one that is choosing to believe the TV news guy? Do you think he was off in his description? Do you think he was trying to kind of candy coat this picture of a woman undermining her husband and belittling him? Or is this the story of two royals coming to a children's music school and being asked to show their little musical skills. But I would love to hear what you guys think. And does this make you question some of the other things we've read? I'm concerned.